I'm Bailey Parnell, and this is Let's Think This Through. Join me for drinks as I bring on guests for conversations that inspire, amuse, and challenge us, but in a fun and relaxing kind of way. Ultimately, it's to help us all learn and live a better, easier life. So let's think this through. Hello and good morning to everyone who has made it with me here to this final episode of Let's Think This Through Season 1, if you can believe it. Do you know what that means? That means that after this episode, I will be able to take the train of thought from every episode and create a nice cut of how we have gotten from Hamza all the way in episode 1 to where we are now. Now, my guest today, my final guest for this season, is someone I actually met through a friend. So shout out to Nina Hersher if you're listening. He and her are the co-founders of the Digital Wellness Institute. We met a few years ago and since have collaborated and shared our mutual passion for digital well-being or digital wellness. This idea that if we are spending so much of our time in digital spaces, even you right now listening to me or watching this episode, well then, clearly, this has an impact on other parts of our life, whether that be productivity, our relationships, our workplaces, how we think, how we feel about ourselves, really every aspect of ourselves, you could argue. So this next guest and I, we are always vibing over this. We are going out for dinners, going to conferences, and we are spreading this good word. And even just recently had a nice long dinner talking about various aspects of this stuff. So we are going to get into that, and he also recently wrote a book, so I'm excited to talk to you all about that and learn about it myself. My guest for this final episode of Let's Think This Through Season 1 is Tyler Rice. Tyler, my friend, thank you for coming and being the final episode of Let's Think This Through Season 1.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course, yeah, you've got to have a continuation of our regular conversations, but this time we're bringing it to the people. So, how are you introducing yourself to
Democratize the conversation. Let's do it.
Exactly. I agree too. You know, a lot of this stuff is often behind a paywall, and I know we're not into that sort of thing. So, how are you introducing yourself to everybody these days?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, as of tomorrow, I guess I'll have a new title at the Digital
Right.
Wellness Institute. So I guess this will be the first time introducing myself as the CEO of the Digital Wellness Institute. But
Fun.
yeah, in
Ooh,
addition
did
to
I
that,
just get a
though,
grand reveal for the finale?
you may have. I was saving that one for you. But in addition to that, I'm an author and I'm a speaker on the topic of digital wellness as well.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm so excited now. Well, this will be coming out. Everyone will be hearing this mid-June. Will this announcement be out by then?
Oh, it will be out as of
Okay.
tomorrow. As of tomorrow.
Okay. So everyone, we're recording near the end of May. So it won't be a grand reveal, but it'll be one of the first press pieces. And we can
Exactly.
we can cut it into a nice video for you.
Exactly.
So then, of course, what are you drinking over there today?
I've got a mimosa. However, I must admit, I do not have any prosecco. So I had to just drip a little bit of white wine in there. So,
Okay.
it's a new. I don't know what to call it, but it's a new
Cheers.
variation.
I feel like it's just like orange sangria. Like what is sangria but like wine and other fruits? I don't know.
Orange sangria. That's exactly it. I love
Sure.
that.
Cheers.
Cheers to that.
We were having a brunch date today, Tyler and I. And when we first met, I knew that Tyler and I shared a lot in common, and we were compared a lot because you are from where?
Minnesota.
Which is known as the Midwest in America. And it honestly wasn't until I moved here until I realized that the way that other Americans talked about Midwesterners was very similar to how they talked about Canadians because I think we share a lot in common. What do you think?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The dialect, uh, the warmth, I would say, the generosity, kind of the openness. However, I think at the same time there might be a little bit of a how to describe it, stoicism, and so
Hmm.
it's this Minnesota nice, and I think this Canadian nice.
Mm.
However, there's a dark side to it, which is I
Oh, say
think,
more.
oh my goodness, I could go on for it. New York is definitely different than Minnesota because I think New York has the reputation of being hard and people being New Yorkers, what have you. However, I think that people in New York are more in desire of community
Hmm.
than in Minnesota. They're more open and willing to let people in. Whereas in Minnesota, on the outside, um, people seem and appear to be so. However, the culture and the community is so
Hmm.
formed and ingrained that it's actually difficult for other people to break into it.
That is so interesting because I have said something similar about Toronto, where I actually feel if you're an outsider or a tourist, that it's actually one of the harder cities to
Yeah.
go tour. And I've because even having lived there, I can't really think of off the top of my mind like what streets to send you down where you could kind of just figure it out. Like it'd probably take like 30 minutes, but then what? And you really kind of have to know where you're going. And I find it, I would think it was a bit harder to go and make friends there than it has been here.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and that's what I love about New York. Like New York, I think by nature of it, a lot of people are transplants. So I think a lot
Mhm.
of people are looking for that community. But nevertheless, it's someplace where I think you can find that, and you can find people that are open to letting you in and sharing a conversation like this
Mhm.
over brunch. Whereas in Minnesota, I don't think that would happen as regularly.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. So, I mean, that is a good point that even though I'm proud to be Canadian and you are from Minnesota and you are Timberwolves all the way, that
That's true.
we are both here in New York. So, why did you leave the Midwest?
Oh, wow. I might need a little bit more of this before that.
Well,
You
fortunately,
know,
it's right here for us.
yeah, I was I was just at a point in my life where I think, if you never leave, you never will, right? And I'm somebody that loves I I love adventure, right? I've traveled quite a bit, and I was looking at two different paths. One, I could kind of stay in Minnesota and buy a house and kind of get going down
Mhm.
that trajectory, that path of my life. Or I had an opportunity to change the script and do something completely different and expand my boundaries and pursue grad school here in New York, meet a new network of friends, have new experiences, things that really appeal to me and that are really exciting. So for me, it was all about that. It was all about kind of not wanting to. Settle is the wrong word because there's a lot of
Mhm.
great things about Minnesota, and I will at some point move back. But
Mhm.
at this stage of my life, or at that stage of my life in particular, it just wasn't what I wanted. And so I wanted something new, something exciting, and something that would push
Mhm.
myself to keep on growing and expanding.
Yeah, I'm glad that you distinguish between the word settle there because I feel like that carries some negative connotation like, oh, if you stayed you settled and you like gave up on yourself or something. But
Right.
I really think that you and I both know a lot of folks where just because you decided not to move to New York City doesn't mean that they're not building something, growing something,
Exactly.
or even that, their family in and of itself isn't a solid purpose, right? It's just not
Precisely.
it wasn't yours.
At that stage of my life, exactly, exactly right.
And where are you like what stage are you now? How long have you been here now?
Great question. 3 years, 3 years so
Mm.
far. I don't know what stage I'm in. I'm not sure. I'm kind of, I think the New York lifestyle is one that I'm always reassessing.
Mhm.
Especially as I get older, and that stability is something that appeals more and more. That
Mhm.
having a house, that economic and financial stability, the family stability,
Mhm.
having a family of my own is something that I'm considering more and more each day. And
Mhm.
New York is a hard place for that,
No, it does not
especially to
play around.
establish that right off the bat. So I'm always considering, always reconsidering.
Yeah, it does not play around. New York City, oh my gosh, man. Especially coming from Toronto and the Canadian dollar. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, every time I buy a toothpaste that's like $12, a piece of my soul dies.
Yes.
Like,
Yes. Yes.
what? What is this? Everyone's like, you need to order from Target. What are you doing? That's and
I think I was most amazed when I moved to New York and I found out that Whole Foods was actually one of the cheaper places to get groceries comparatively. Um, then that to me was like that summed it all up. Like that was like, wow,
yeah.
this
Remind
is
me
New
why
York.
we did this to ourselves. And we
But
did
I
this.
wouldn't change it for the world. I wouldn't change it for the
No,
world.
100%. I'm saying all this even though I actually don't want to leave. And part of it is because I get to, run into folks like you and know that a lot of those transplants that we talk about is actually most of the people you meet here.
Yeah.
And in a way, we all share one thing in common because to choose this city to live in, you're saying a lot about yourself already.
Yep. Yep.
And so then it was here that you also met Lily. Tell
Yeah.
tell everyone about lovely Lily.
Well, she is lovely. She's brilliant. She's lovely. She's funny. She's hilarious.
Is she
She
listening?
is she listening? No, she's I think she left actually. She went to go get coffee. She's brilliant. She is kind of my inspiration for perseverance, for um, somebody that moved. Again, she's from India, born and raised.
Mhm,
Moved here in 2016 to pursue her master's in law,
mhm.
and studied that in San Francisco. Got her master's in intellectual property law, and then I think the thing that is the coolest thing about her is that she moved then to New York and studied for the bar exam. Which again, if the bar exam is 1/12 intellectual property law, there's 11 other parts of that test
Oh,
that
geez.
she had to teach herself. Right. Again, she's
Wow.
brilliant. So the fact that she did that just speaks so much to her character and kind of what she wants in life, and it's really inspiring to me.
How long have you been together?
2.5 years now. 2.5 years.
Nice. And I know that we both share the experience of being in interracial, intercultural relationships, and
Yeah.
with me, you, Hamza, and Lily sitting around in that circle over dinner not too long ago, that was just some good laughs about some of the peculiar and unexpected situations that we
Yeah.
find ourselves in on
Yeah.
either side. And to share those experiences with y'all, people who understand that it's all coming from a place of love, but they are very comedic at sometimes,
Yes.
was, I swear, cathartic for us.
100%. 100%. It's something new every single day, and I think it's so fun. It's so exciting to be able to learn something new each and every day about her family, her culture, and to be able to share that from my perspective as well. I think that makes it interesting and exciting.
Well, it's interesting because, well, for a number of reasons, but that won't stop. You think that it might, but I mean, maybe it will in 20 years. But I've been with Hamza 9 years and I've known him longer, and there are still things about that I learn about him and the culture and kind of vice versa. And it comes with some laughs, but it also comes with some challenges as well.
Yeah.
What would you say is one of the things that you've learned about yourself being in an intercultural, interracial relationship?
Hmm. Wow. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is I think the biggest thing that I've learned is like the ability and the importance of just listening, right? Um, if I were to say something, or if she were to say something, right, the meaning behind it might be ever so different, or ever so
Mm,
slightly different, right? And so to be able to listen and to ask questions and to be inquisitive and to inquire and to learn a little bit in the process,
mm,
I think goes such a long way. And I think that's what anybody in a relationship wants. They want to be heard. And I think, if I were not to be in a intercultural, interracial relationship, that might be something that I would take for granted, right? And I might just expect, or anticipate that I knew what she was meaning or saying just because of our cultural familiarity. Um, so I think that's a skill that's built through this.
yeah, and I like what you're saying there to the point of that is actually something that every relationship would probably benefit from. And,
Mm,
I've obviously had past relationships too, but you don't think about it. You don't apply that lens of, oh, you grew up differently. So you don't offer it with like so readily, I guess.
yeah, yeah,
And, but you're right. Even if you grew up in the exact same place with the exact same religion and you have the exact same skin color, it's almost like we should still afford each other that grace of, well, maybe you didn't intend this the way that I heard it because of my upbringing.
yeah.
Hmm.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
Hmm. You and Lily have shared some hilarious stories over the time that we've known each other, and some that I think and Hamza thinks should be made into a Bollywood movie. You need to tell that story about going. You need to tell the Bollywood movie story. As much of that story as you can. Like, what I think it's so hilarious and quintessential and love-based of what it's like to be in, these relationships sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm not sure who will be listening to this one, so I think I'll probably just do the Spark Notes version.
PG.
But at the end of the day, I think one of the most interesting parts about at least the Indian culture versus the American culture, from what I found, is that, personally, if you were to ask me, Tyler, like, would you like another glass of,
Yeah.
orange, orange, orange prosecco, or whatever it may be, and I would be like, well, Bailey, thank you so much, but I'm okay, right? In Indian culture, they'd be like, oh, but would you like another glass? And you're like, no, 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 thank you, no, thank you. And they're like, "Oh, please, but have another glass, right?" And at some
So
point,
true.
I'm just like, "No, like, no." And
Yeah.
so I remember one of, with Lily, one of the funniest things was like, yeah, she was asking me if I wanted tea before bed, and I was like, "No, no, thank you." And it kept on going, and I was just like, "No." And then she was like, "Why are you yelling at
Yeah.
me?"
Oh, yeah.
But it was one of those things where it's just, there's a difference of culture there, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, I swear this was the exact same with my in-laws and everything. And at first, Hamza and I had a similar conversation where I was like, and I grew up in Brampton, Ontario, which is, if anyone listening knows it, it's extremely diverse, and its greatest population is probably Indian immigrants.
Yeah.
And so I grew up around this my whole life. And still, though, when I was with my in-laws, they'd be like, "Are we having ice cream?" I'd be like, "No, I'm okay." Ice cream? Come on. And then I think what Lily said was so like it made it kind of pretty succinct and summed it up nicely when she's like, one, it's our way of showing love. Hamza
Yeah.
says the same thing. But I love when Lily said, if you don't accept, the assumption is not that you don't want food, it's that you're shy.
Yeah, 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 yep, exactly, exactly.
Because who wouldn't want food? You
Right.
obviously want it. Why would you say no?
Exactly, exactly, yes, and I can give off that shy demeanor sometimes, so I think, that was another part of the equation for sure.
Really? You do?
Oh, yeah, for sure, especially, yeah, when I'm getting to know somebody for the first time, 100%.
I feel like I can't see that. I see mostly like the outgoing guy, maybe like the CEO of the Digital Wellness Institute now. Is it a balance for you? Like would you say that introvert, extrovert, both?
Yeah, 100% ambivert. I think, yeah, it depends. If I'm on stage, I can project and be, extroverted. If I'm at a social gathering, 100%. But, I can definitely need to recharge, like when I get back, or, just be in my own space.
Mm,
Just having that quiet time, and just that reflection, and that recharging is super important.
mm. And I mean, that clearly connects to the book you wrote, which we're going to have to talk about at some
Yeah.
point. But
Yeah.
I think what might be useful for everybody is they don't even know yet what is the Digital Wellness Institute.
Yeah.
Tell them what you're building over there.
Well, great question. So we are building, essentially the first, employee wellness company that's focused on digital wellness. So my passion is really around the impact that screen time has on the human experience, right?
Mhm.
For both positive and for negative, for better and for worse. And what I've found, and what I'm really excited about in terms of the work that we're doing, is that this concept of digital wellness is what I define as kind of the missing metric in most employee well-being strategies. Meaning,
Mhm.
most employers are considering, employee mental health. Thankfully, right? They're considering employee physical health. They're thinking about the quality of relationships, and the friendships and the culture that they're building at an organization. But Bailey, what they're not looking at is the extent to which screen time and screen mediated technologies either improve or detract from each of those dimensions, or domains.
Mhm.
And so that's what we call as the missing metric. If you're not measuring that, if you're not thinking about the impact of screen time on the employee experience, you're missing a large part of the equation. And just for instance, we just did a study, and we've used our scientifically validated, digital balance survey that we've provided to employees. We found that 22% of an organization's burnout can actually be attributed to a lack of this digital balance, right?
Mhm.
22% of burnout, 50% of an employee's net satisfaction or net promoter score, ENPS, attributed to either the existence or the lack of digital balance within an organization. And fascinatingly, 12% of depression, of employees' depression, can actually be attributed to a lack of digital balance. So this to me is really groundbreaking. I think it's the next dimension of not only employer well-being and employee well-being, but frankly, organizational strategy. Um, and I'm just so
Mhm.
so lucky and fortunate to be kind of on the forefront of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a task to do, and it hopefully in our lifetime, right? And we share a similar mission. And one of the things that I love that you and your team have put together is the digital flourishing wheel, because I feel that it helps people understand and break down how something like digital affects every aspect of their life.
Yeah.
So tell them what the first off, the digital flourishing wheel is.
Yeah, well, it's a model that's grounded or rooted in positive psychology. So it's I think while most conceptions or notions of digital well-being prior to this had been grounded in the negative, right? We're thinking about the impact of screen overuse and how that is detrimental to our mental health, right? Or we're thinking about the impact that uh, being poor digital citizenship is having in terms of our society and the news cycles and kind of how we're approaching being citizens in this digital world. The digital flourishing model is actually, it flips it completely on its head, right? And it's grounded 100% in positive psychology, and it's asking, okay, let's, instead of looking at the negatives, let's look at the strengths, right? When we look at the strengths, we can identify where we're doing well and
Mhm.
ultimately where we need to improve on. However, looking at it through that lens is so much more motivating, right? Because there's
Mhm.
so many benefits from technology. Take relationships, for example, right? The fact that you and I, as transplants from, Toronto and Minnesota respectively, can use technology, can leverage technology to stay connected with our friends and family back home in
Mhm.
ways that was not possible 10, 15, certainly 20 years ago, right? Um, that is an incredible benefit. It's an incredible benefit. So digital flourishing defined is finding that state of optimal usage where we're getting the most out of technology
Mhm.
without technology getting the most out of us. So when we
Mhm.
live at that state of optimal usage, that state of digital flourishing, state of digital balance, that's what we want to strive for. That's when we are doing our best, and that's when I think humanity is at its best.
Mhm. I tend to agree. I mean, I always say, this stuff is a tool, and we have used tools to, you know, build mountains, and we've used them to tear them down. And you could say the same when it comes to your well being, right? But I think that for a lot of folks in our space, we take for granted that this stuff is very clear to us. We work with it every single day. But with the digital flourishing wheel, so everyone imagine, you've got this. I like I love a good little design as well. So we've got 8 components of this wheel, and we've got digital flourishing in the center. And the idea is that digital flourishing can relate to your productivity, can relate to your environment, can relate to relationships, as Tyler mentioned, can relate to your mental health, physical health. And I think every single component of this is not as obvious to folks. Like, for example, I don't think that my family on the daily thinks about how your interaction with mobile screens is actually affecting physical health, like carpal tunnel, eyes, nearsightedness, all these things. If your lower back, because you're on a screen all day, is the thing that's distracting you and getting you out of flow, it's still a thing getting you out of flow. So I'm obsessed with like the holistic nature of this. And what I wanted to do with you on Let's Think This Through is actually bring your thought experiment and do it in a slightly different way, because everybody gets a thought experiment. But I thought we could extend yours to be almost pretty healthy portion of our conversation today. So, Tyler, are you ready for your thought
I'm ready.
experiment?
I'm ready. I think I am, at least. I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay, good. Because this is basically what I do for fun. So, as you know, so the thought experiments are where we dive into hypothetical situations related to the topics and allows for an exploration of different ideas, and I think unconstrained by reality. So I called yours Baymax in real life. Have you seen Big Hero 6?
I can't say that I have.
Okay. I'm so excited for you now because you get to watch it for the first time. And Big Hero 6, I think, is honestly one of the better movies out there, explaining to people how I think we get closer to digital flourishing, well being, balance. Baymax is a personal health robot,
Hmm.
health and well-being robot that follows around our nice lead character, and his whole job is to take care of the mental, physical, emotional well-being of this kid who's the star of the movie. I don't want to spoil it for you, but why I called this Baymax in real life is because I want us to imagine a future where
Mhm.
we all have a personal AI assistant dedicated to our digital flourishing. And we want to think about it as this nice little robot that follows us around. Great. This AI is designed to help us achieve perfect balance across all elements of the digital flourishing wheel. And so we're going to
Mhm.
do a thought experiment where we envision how in the future could our little Baymax help us with each part of the digital flourishing wheel. And that's why this thought experiment is a little bit longer, because I'm going to start
Mhm.
with productivity, end at digital citizenship, and we'll have to think through each of them. Does that
All right.
sound fun to you?
Sounds awesome. Let's do it. Let's dive in.
Most fun thing you'll do all week. So so let's start with productivity. Explain this one first off. What does it mean for people? Digital flourishing and productivity, and then how could Baymax help?
Yeah, great question. Well, productivity, as it sounds, we're all thinking about the impacts that technology has on exactly that, right? So, does it enhance, does it promote it, or does it serve as a detriment to it, right? The one thing I will add on the digital flourishing model,
Mhm.
as you mentioned, is that each domain is more or less related to the other, right? So, you gave an
Mm,
excellent example of how physical health could impact our productivity, right?
mhm,
Or frankly, how our environment, the way that our environment is set up. Think about digital clutter, right? If
mhm,
your screen if you got 30 different tabs open, or
mhm,
if you don't have a good filing system for your technology, for your files, etc., like how does that impact your productivity? So at the end of the day, again, productivity, we're really thinking about the ways that our technology enhances that and promotes peak states of flow, rather than being a detriment to it.
mhm.
So if I were to think about an AI, is it Baymax? Is that correct?
Yes.
Baymax.
Baymax are helpful healthcare well-being robot.
I like it. All right, all right. Well, I want to hear what you think, because I know you've thought about this quite a bit as well. If I were to have an AI system that would help me in productivity, I think it would do a couple things. One, I think it could organize my schedule. Right. So
Mhm,
much of our days are, especially in the age of technology, right? We've got
mhm,
diverted attention across multiple different sources. I would love an AI to say, like, okay, Tyler, here's all of the inputs that you have coming in. Here's your schedule. Here's your to-do list, your task
mm,
list, essentially.
mhm,
Let's block out the noise of other things that might be distracting you, right? Whether that's a Slack message or emails. And let's make a dedicated time to responding to those. And let's carve out dedicated periods of deep work, deep focus work, where you are doing the tasks that you intended to do.
mhm.
Because that's a scarcity. Like that is something that
I love it.
I wish I had.
Job well done. That is exactly how Baymax could help productivity. And I literally picture when you see the character, I know I'll get a message from you because I could picture this character like not letting people in your bedroom because they're messing with your productivity. Okay, the next part of this is environment. So
Yes.
one down, seven to go.
7 to go.
What is digital flourishing and how does environment relate and how's Baymax going to help?
Yeah, yeah, all about optimizing our digital and physical spaces to enhance our well-being.
Mm,
So there's the notion of digital feng shui, thinking about the way our home office is set up. As you can see behind me, I've got plants, and I'm bringing that into my home office environment. I've got
mm,
my piano, which is something that I use to kind of spark creativity when I'm stuck. My guitar over there as well. And so digital feng shui is not only about the physical environment, but it's also
mm,
about the digital environment as well. And it's super important to think about that, because again, it impacts productivity, in particular. It impacts the extent of our kind of our mental health in a lot of ways as
mm,
well, and even physical health. If we think about ergonomic design of our workstations, right, it
mhm.
impacts physical health. So I've got a standing desk. I've got blue light blocking glasses, everything like that. So how could AI help in this one? This is an interesting one. I think you were talking to me about Hamza. You were saying how Hamza loves to work in the dark, and yet he has kind of a LED light, like a red, like primal, like
Yeah, I
LED light
wonder
that
if I
just.
can show anyone who's watching. It's right here. Oh no, you definitely can't see it. Oh no, yeah, it's right here, and it looks like I'm on a spaceship ready to take off.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I think AI would be awesome in terms of like coordinating my accent lighting around my desk, and
Interesting.
either adjusting the lighting or the temperature, or like the sound environment for like optimal comfort and concentration. Oh my gosh,
Fun.
We're talking about Hans Zimmer,
Yeah.
right? The Zimmer. So I don't even know if I'm embarrassed about this. I don't think I am. I think I'm very proud of this. I'm in Hans Zimmer's like 0.002% of listeners on Spotify. because my friend made a Hans Zimmer study playlist back in like 2015,
Mhm.
and I've listened to that every single day pretty much since then for when I'm working. So,
That would be like the thing I'm like most proud of.
oh, for sure, for sure, for sure. So I would
Amazing.
love
Can't
like
wait.
if this Baymax AI assistant could like tap into my like neural networks and
Ooh,
understand like, okay, what state of flow is Tyler in? Is he in a state of flow? And then what kind of music or ambiance or lighting or whatnot could help sustain that or get him into that and then ultimately sustain it.
that's right. Oh my gosh, love. Hey, Tyler, would you like Red Light and a Hans Zimmer playlist right now? I love it.
100%.
Okay, job well done. Next is communication on the digital flourishing wheel. So, what is it, and how could Baymax support it?
Yeah, digital communication is all about managing streams of information and ultimately optimizing our communication platforms to enhance just that communication, right? So when I'm thinking about AI, I'm actually building out something like this. It's not AI per se, but what we're doing daily is we're taking essentially a scientific approach to understanding everybody's unique communication preferences in digital
Mhm.
spaces. So if you understand that, okay, maybe Tyler is more formal and
Mm,
Bailey's more informal, or Tyler is more deliberate while Bailey is somebody that is fast. And we all know this in terms of like, we work in teams and networks where if I send a long, wordy, descriptive email and you respond with 2 bullet points back, right?
sounds good.
Right. Or if you're giving me information and it's just like Tyler, I need like bullet, right? And let's say I was somebody that was more descriptive and I would love something that had a little more context, right?
Mhm.
We have these different personas, and just like Myers-Briggs has, the scientific rigor behind understanding your personality, we can do the same and apply that to our communication preferences, right?
I like
So
that.
one of the things that I've been thinking about, we built that out already. So we have these personas that everybody can can
Mhm.
um, can find. And it's essentially a strength finders assessment
Mhm.
for your communication persona. But what AI could do is overlay that and actually translate. So if I were to message you, Bailey, on Slack, and again, it were to be long, wordy, or frankly formal, or informal, or whatnot, and it were to know what your persona is, it could essentially just nudge me to say, "Hey, consider rewording this or
Mm.
consider sending this message instead of that." So I think that's a
Mhm.
great application and use case for AI.
Yeah, and then, it'd be nice if our Baymaxes just communicated with each other, and then they
Oh,
were like, "Bailey's busy right now." Bailey's busy right now. She would prefer to be in a state of solitude and focus.
yes, yes,
Tyler, this could probably help friendship someday. Is like, imagine your little Baymax is like talking to your friends, and it's like you knew your friends' communication preferences. They may not answer for a month, but it doesn't mean they don't love you. Just so you
exactly,
know, you've done
exactly.
nothing wrong. Okay. Good, I like it. Relationships is the next one. So things like here I see social support, source of connection. What is it,
Yeah.
and how can Baymax help us?
Yep, yep. I mean, think about exactly that, right? How can technology improve the quality of our relationships through providing us a greater sense of connectedness? Again, our example is a great one. How does it help us feel more connected to those back home, right?
Mhm,
How does it provide us social support, right?
mhm,
Tapping into networks of like-minded people or people that are going through something similar online that can provide a great deal of support for us, right? So it's all about promoting that while also mitigating maybe the negative aspects or the less
mhm.
supportive aspects of digital connectivity. So when I think about relationships, I think about things that AI could help with. Honestly, I think this is maybe one of the more challenging ones because it is the most human. Meaning,
Hmm.
relationships are deeply, deeply human. Obviously, right? Like it's not something you can necessarily
Mm,
slap an AI over and help with per se. I think there are, again, if we
I
think
don't
about like
know.
norming and nudges, right? It's something that I think it could help out with. Like,
Yeah.
for example, if Bailey's birthday or anniversary is in, a month or two, right? It could say to me, like,
Cute.
hey, like, good morning, Tyler. Like, remember to send Bailey this message, so
Aw.
that's something that I could help with. But what do you think? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this one.
Oh, I like that. I mean, oh, I was just thinking, do you believe that you can have a relationship with a dog?
100%.
So then would we have to extend our definition of relationships to living things or
Okay.
organic things or things with memory, in which case AI would be included. I don't
Oh.
know.
Oh, yeah. Can you have a real oh, this is interesting. You're totally right. I think, you're totally right.
But interesting. I mean, like literally thinking out loud, but I'm like, oh, how could Baymax support somebody's relationship with their dog? Yo, imagine Baymax was like, you haven't fed Spot today. Like,
Huh?
Spot needs to go for a walk.
Yep.
I don't know
Yep.
why I
Yep.
said Spot,
Well,
but
I mean, it's a great dog name. That's why. Uh, I think, well, let's dive into this deeper because I think I would love to hear what you have to say. Can a human have a relationship with AI, a la Her, or
yeah,
some
yeah,
some other movie like that? What do you
yeah.
say?
I would say yes. And now that's coming from a gut place and a mind place. And part of the reason is that I have felt a relationship with my GBT. It sounds wild to people, but I have genuinely felt grateful towards my GBT when it's like helped me. I literally am like an AI assisted like brainstormer. Like I literally talk to GBT at least once a day about something, and it might
Mm,
be something like, oh, I saw this sign today, like where did this company start, like what do you
mm,
think, like about why is there a nap york, what is nap york, why do people need to take naps so much in New York, like this is literally something I saw the other day. So I have felt grateful and like affection towards this blob of, I like to think of AI not as artificial intelligence but more and more recently as collected intelligence. And if I'm, it's almost like not a like a yeah. So I that's, I'm thinking out loud. Obviously, I need to
yeah.
clarify my thoughts a little
Yeah.
bit in my own time. But my gut is saying, of course you can. Of course you can, because you can have a relationship with a fish so long as you
Yep.
ascribe the, you know, humanistic behaviors and humanistic kind of attributes to it.
Yeah. Okay. All
What's
right.
the word for that when you do it in literature? Ascribe human characteristics to a
Oh,
inanimate
personification.
object.
Personification? No.
Yes, personification.
Yeah.
Listen, we've gone further on personifying AI than any other technology that has ever
Yes.
existed.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
literally trying to create ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Brilliantly said.
yeah, I guess how we use that tool to support that is interesting too, right? Because if we say how can it support, I think we started here, and at least what I thought at first was how can it support human relationships. So I
Yeah.
did come into it with that thinking, but
Yeah.
that's what a thought experiment is. There's no rules.
Yeah.
Okay. And connected to that though is mental health, which is what's
Yes.
next, and that's where we have, I think, first vibed. That's
Yeah.
where my first area of research was. But I'm so curious to know what you think about digital flourishing, how it connects to mental health, and then how Baymax is going to help us.
Yeah. I mean, so from a digital flourishing perspective, when we're looking at mental health, we're looking at essentially a controlled and intentional use of digital devices, apps, and social media. Specifically, that's devoid of a lot of the negative aspects, whether that's social comparison or FOMO or escapism. So that's like defined how we're looking at mental health. But in terms of an AI, I think that's actually comes back to our conversation just a second ago on relationships, because if we're thinking about mental health as something that you know is essentially a controlled and intentional use of devices, I almost think there's a scenario in which our relationships with our devices and technology
Mm-hmm.
and AI in particular could become so strong
Mm-hmm.
that we may no longer have the ability to have a controlled and intentional use. And
Hmm.
I
Interesting.
actually don't know how I would think about that quite yet. I
Hmm.
certainly see a scenario in which those relationships being so strong could be akin to a human to human relationship, and then that would be a good thing. However, I also see a scenario in which
Hmm.
that relationship could appear so strong that it actually takes away from or detracts from the human to human relationship because of the complexities of human nature and the pain and the hardship and the
Hmm.
misunderstandings and everything that comes from being human and being in a relationship with another.
Yeah, and you
Um,
could argue we don't even fully understand our own mental health and cognition yet. And we're putting it into, we're coding it into this creature of AI, but we
mhm,
don't even fully understand ourselves yet.
mhm, mhm. Yep, 100%. So, when I think about AI and improving in mental health, I think it could come from, again, there's a lot of evidence and research out there regarding uh, essentially voice patterns and understanding based
Mm,
off of like my voice today, like how is Tyler doing, right?
mhm.
Is Tyler stressed? Is Tyler anxious? Is Tyler, poorly rested? Like what have you? I think there's an element of kind of providing those nudges and that clarity and that understanding when like I don't even know myself or I can't even recognize or I haven't taken the time to recognize myself. How am I doing? Right? To have an
Mhm.
AI assistant to be like, hey, like it's uh, a sense of a high degree of anxiety this morning.
Oh,
Is that something that we could work through together? Almost like a personal
I love
therapist, right
it. And
there.
that's where Baymax would come in and just give you a big hug, which
Exactly.
actually does happen in the movie, even though the kid doesn't
Does it
think
really?
they want it. So cute.
I
So
love that.
I could see. Yeah, but it is interesting because even in the movie, like I that I really like to overanalyze movies and stories and all that stuff, but I think it's because they're all human stories at the end of the day, and it kind of is like a pathway into other types of existence. And with with Baymax, to our earlier question about can we simulate relationships, Baymax is acting. Someone has taught Baymax, our AI, what empathy looks like, what love
Mhm,
looks like, what caring
mhm,
for someone looks like. And so
mhm,
then Baymax gives a hug and says nice things to you or something. But
mhm,
the impact that it has on a human could be the same. It could.
mhm,
Obviously the movie explores this in a fantastical way, but that could be the same in real life too.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Which of course connects to the next one, which is physical health. And we talked a
Yes.
little bit about this, but bring it full circle. What is
Yeah,
digital flourishing
physical.
and physical health?
Yeah, and the digital flourishing concept, physical health is really about having a high body awareness as it pertains to technology and the impact that it has on our physical health. So we're looking at ergonomics, we're looking at eye health, we're looking at sleep health, and
Mhm.
we're looking at recovery and rest as well. So that's at least from a digital flourishing perspective what we're talking about. From an AI perspective, this is interesting. I think sleep is something that I want to latch onto just for a moment because I
Mhm.
think AI has the ability to really analyze kind of sleep patterns
Mhm.
and potentially suggest opportunities for improvement. Whether that would be from disconnecting right at night, we know that blue light exposure at the end of the day or towards bedtime really disrupts our circadian rhythms. So it's little nudges like that based off of our physical health inputs that
Mhm.
could help improve in that domain. Um, what do you think? What do you think is the best
Yeah, I think you're
application for
right. I think it's already happening. Already AI knows, can sleep is a great example. There are already apps that can track your sleep and tell you about what was happening when you were there and can give you information to help you do better decision making, right?
Mhm,
So,
mhm,
yeah, 100%.
mhm,
Now, I thought it was interesting because the 7th of the 8th on the Flourishing Rails tech-enabled health, but now
mhm.
how does that how is that different from physical health, mental health, and all the other things?
You're so that's I'm glad you asked because as you were just mentioning that example of physical health, it is actually exactly what tech-enabled health is. So tech-enabled
Mm,
health is using technology to measure various different biometrics and behaviors so that we
right.
can help build an individual understanding of our own health data and really
Mm,
optimize that with behavior change to improve in our
mhm,
own health, right? So your example of biometrics and or sleep diagnostics is exactly what tech-enabled health is and refers to. However, it refers to specifically using that information to help induce positive norms and positive behavior change
mhm.
when it comes to our technology usage. So I want to think about this a little bit more in terms of AI. Um,
I guess
what you said
this
is a
is Baymax. I
this is
guess
Baymax,
Baymax
right?
is tech-enabled health, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, of all the categories, we just took tech-enabled health and just made it that's the whole thing you do.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
true. Yeah, I mean,
Uh-huh.
Theoretically, we're
Uh-huh.
saying Baymax could help with every aspect of this wheel.
Precisely, precisely, yeah. And I think, I mean, if I can jump ahead then to digital citizenship,
Yeah,
because
our last and final one on the wheel.
because again, this whole conversation shows again how interconnected it all is.
Very
But
much so.
if tech-enabled health is all about biometric data and understanding how that can be used to support our physical health or our mental health, or certainly our productivity, right? Digital citizenship is then really about, in part, it's about having a good sense of our own personal data, how it's being used, how it's being democratized, right? In part, it's about our awareness around that data. It's also about etiquette, and it's about positive
Mm-hmm.
consumption of news and information, and frankly, what we call like digital literacy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of all of that in one. It's essentially how is this data being used, and how are we interacting with our technology in a way that helps us to be good digital citizens, or how are we promoting citizenship
Right.
in a virtual setting?
I see it. Now, Baymax is going to be there with a shield and trying to protect you, saying, "Oh, these hackers are trying to get in. I've
Uh huh.
I've taken care of them for you."
Uh huh. Uh huh. Yep. I think that's one. I think encouraging responsible and ethical kind of online behavior. Um, but I think that privacy and safety part is a huge aspect of it. I love the idea of little Baymax being there with a shield and kind of being like a knight, like a knight in shining armor kind of a thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I can see it. Although, so Baymax kind of looks like, did you ever have like the Michelin Man ads here?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
With
for
the
sure.
big, like, white, big, fluffy, giant thing?
Oh,
That's
I
kind of what
was
Baymax looks like.
I was
I
imagining like a mix between R2D2 and Wally.
I love it because why not? It could be anything. We're making it up in our head, but but thinking about Baymax in that form with the puffy white thing with a shield
Yes,
and a sword
yes,
or whatever the digital version of that right now
yes.
is really getting me going. It's giving me
I like that. I like that.
Okay, so we have completed your thought experiment. Baymax is we should all be so lucky to help our digital flourishing. And how many of these concepts, so I said I have to come back to this book that you wrote
Yeah.
called Tactical Disconnection. So
Yes.
how many of these concepts end up in the book? And you know what even is tactical disconnection?
Yeah, great question. So I would say the at the end of the day, what I'm really talking about is not each of those domains in specific. So I'm not breaking it down by each of those
Mhm.
eight domains. I'm talking about digital flourishing in totality, right? And I'm
Mhm.
saying that okay, there is a point of maximum benefit that each of us using technology is capable of achieving, right? Like a scale, if we were to imagine this as kind of a weighted scale, digital flourishing is right in the center of that scale. We are getting the most out of technology without technology getting the most out of us, right?
Mhm.
If we were to add weights on the right side of that scale and have a little bit too much connectivity, right? The scale is going to start to shift and it start
Mhm.
to get out of whack, right? And we're going to fall into what I call the zone of negative externalities, right? And things like that include, again, either depression or anxiety or, frankly, physical disconnection with others. Impacts to our health, our well-being, our productivity, and then I look at that from a macro lens and look at that from an organizational lens and say, okay, if our entire employee base is on this right side of the equation, this right side of the scale, and we're over connected, right?
Mhm.
What are the negative impacts of that from a business and a bottom line perspective? So ultimately, tactical
Mhm.
disconnection refers to essentially removing weights from that side of the equation so we can get back to that state of optimal usage, that state of digital flourishing. And what it does is it creates a business and economic argument
Mhm.
as to why we need to see disconnection as a benefit rather than a detriment. And I think it's really important to call out because most organizational leaders, I think for the first 24 years, 23 years of this century, have seen connection and connectivity as a benefit, right? I told you and Hamza this, I think, before, but my very first experience starting a business was I went to a Stanford incubator for 6 months, and I built an employee wellness company focused on digital wellness. And at the end of the 6 months, I presented in front of venture capitalists,
Those people. Those, yeah.
VCs.
Got it. The
Anyways,
VCs, yeah.
the VCs presented in front of them, and essentially they said, "Well, that's interesting, Tyler. Great, great presentation, but." remind me, why would I want my employees to disconnect?
Oh
Why
my
would I want them to be,
gosh. Oh my
unavailable?
gosh, man. Don't even get me going
And
on
that
that.
was in 2016, right? And frankly, I think there's been an underlying change, especially since the pandemic. But tactical disconnection is all about helping, especially leaders, see employee disconnection as something that's restorative, as something that's necessary, as something that's natural. And it's really going against this commonly held belief that those who are the most connected are the most productive, because they're not.
Oh.
There's a study that I cite in the book where they had consultants, and they had two different test groups of consultants. One that was working essentially 80 hours a week, the other that was working 40 hours a week, but that was pretending to work 80 hours a week, right?
Mhm.
And so what they did was that they had their managers assess the quality of their work in those two test groups. And they found that essentially the quality of the work did not change. They could not tell the difference between those who worked 40 versus 80.
Mhm.
And so I think it's just really about changing people's mindsets around this, hustle culture, this idea that the more connected we are, the happier we are, the more productive we are,
Mhm.
to really get to the state of balance and digital flourishing.
Well, I love it because even though we've just talked about all of the, many good things that this kind of tech and digital and, connectivity can do for us, we are still saying you got to take a break. That is one
Yeah.
of the strategies, like to be digitally well is to actually not be connected.
Yeah.
And then what are some of your tips for people given like I know the book is coming out soon and we should everyone you should buy it and read it, but what are some like quick tips that people could do to tactically disconnect in their own life?
Yeah. The first is to change our perceptions. And I think to promote our own self awareness around how we are perceived and how our tech use is perceived by others. There's a famous art exhibition by a gentleman named Eric Pickerskill, and he created this art exhibit called Connected, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and so what it is essentially it's pictures of a family of people in everyday lives, as if they were using their phones, as if they were looking down at their devices. However, excuse me, the art exhibit is called Removed.
Mm,
And as you can maybe tell, their devices have been removed from the photo. So
mm,
we have, a picture of people on the subway, or frankly, two people that have just gotten married who are standing outside of the church, right? Each looking down respectively at their palms, and there's nothing in them, right?
mm,
And so when we give keynote addresses at the Digital Wellness Institute, we often share these images and we ask people to say, what is the first reaction that comes to mind? What is your perception of these individuals? And oftentimes we hear, lonely, sad, depressed, disconnected, not present, unaware, what have
mhm.
you, right? And then
Yeah.
we ask them to think about, okay, but what if we were in those photos? How often is it that we are the people in those photos? And oftentimes the audience kind of goes silent and they think, oh my gosh, those exact perceptions, those exact notions
Mhm,
are what other people have of me,
mhm.
right? And so the first thing in tactical disconnection is really tuning into that both outside of work, but then frankly, professionally as well, to understand how our digital usage during meetings is perceived by others.
Totally.
And how we can actually leverage and change our digital usage to improve the perceptions or our self perceptions from others. So that's number one. Number two is about changing our environment, right? We know that behavior change is very, very hard, right? And so there's so much research that's been done on kind of nudge theory and positive norming, but we need to actually change our physical environments to promote disconnection. And what I mean by that is actually I want to get your thoughts on this,
Mm,
because I love architecture and I love
mm,
design. And one of the things that I've always thought about is how strange it is that most Western culture houses are centered around a TV. Like a living room is centered around a television,
mhm.
right? And obviously mine's back there, but I think it's fascinating to think about what an alternate scenario could look like, right? Where technology is no longer necessarily the centerpiece,
Mhm.
but it's more of kind of an aside. And I wanted to get your thoughts. What do you think would be like the house of the future? What do you think that will look like?
I think the house of the future would be that the tech is still there, the TV is still there, but it
Hmm.
doesn't look like a TV. That
Hmm.
it blends so naturally into these picture frames, and I think the idea would be that tech is invisible. I think we
Mhm,
actually would prefer, like if I say, "Oh, what's more beautiful to a person?"
mhm,
and I show them two rooms or even just behind you. Let's say I had like a huge piece of art behind you right now. I think most people would say I would rather the background where Tyler has the huge piece of art. I think we'll get to a place in the future where they are the same thing.
mhm.
And it's just like we're trying to recreate the disconnect. But you and I just had a whole podcast about the benefits of this stuff. And I
Mhm.
think I'm a little biased because movies and TV shows are my favorite thing to do for fun. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
keep the TV, make it really big. And I actually went to, this is a whole other conversation, I guess, but Hamza and I have an Apple Vision Pro, which just come up on this in the season before. And going into the Apple Vision Pro was wild. Oh my gosh, absolutely paradigm shifting immediately. And the way that you can watch tech and screens and whatnot could theoretically change the way that you design homes. The
Mm,
thing that, because you actually need a smaller space to get a bigger space, right?
yep,
And
yep,
as big as you want, really. It's just mind blowing. But the thing that it doesn't have yet is community. So
yeah.
right now, Hamza and I can't watch it together. Now, that might not always be the case. Like, so I think that thinking at the top of my head, one would be that tech is invisible, and we are trying to get back to a feel of offline, like tangible, sort of
Mhm.
human to the senses stuff, and that might actually take less space moving. It might seriously take less space moving forward.
Yeah,
So. But
yeah.
to our earlier conversation as well about intercultural relationships, I have seen that with all of my Indian friends and their parents, whenever I go to any one of their houses, there is always a front sitting room for guests, and and then there is a back TV room, and that one is not the focus. There is always a front sitting room,
Mhm,
and I thought
mhm.
that's interesting because, to your point, that would probably be a TV room in the bigger the bigger space in the
Yeah,
Western world.
yeah.
Hmm.
And, I think TV aside, like, think about for me, one of the things that I'm really interested in is, uh essentially imagine have you seen those workout mirrors, the ones that like turn into like
Yes.
TVs or like
Yes.
whatever?
That's a
It's really
good
cool.
reference, yeah.
So I have a mirror in my living room here, and I was just imagining like what if that became the interface? Like instead of having this, in my pocket, what if that became that for
Yes.
everybody in the household, right? And so in a way, it disconnects us because it's not like I'm in the kitchen or I'm in bed and I'm scrolling on my
Mhm.
phones, right?
Mhm.
However, I still have that portal or that connectedness to FaceTime or Instagram or like whatever it is that's helping me feel connected with others.
Mhm.
It's just not a part of me, right? And it's
Mm.
not always next to me. So for me, tactical disconnection is in part about that. It's about
Mhm.
creating strategic separation between us and our devices to promote the optimal usage
Mm.
rather than, detract or and while detracting from the negative usage as well.
I love it. I kinda see it like, the Harry Potter, the mirror.
Yeah.
Like, imagine you just, like, get up in the morning, you look at the mirror, Baymax, or your mom is like, "You've got this today. You
Yep.
can do it." Like,
Yep.
I think that would support mental health and well-being. Well,
Yeah.
I'm really excited to read this book. When can people expect it out? So,
Yeah.
knowing that
It'll
this will come out mid-June, what can we expect?
Well, yes. So it'll we working with the publishers right now to finalize everything. So it's going to be actually September or October of this year.
Okay, fun.
So a little bit, a few months behind, but I think it'll be better at the end of it because of it. And what people can expect, I think, is a book for everybody. And I think that's one of the things that my publisher is really tried to. I wouldn't say caution me against, but they've always said, pick your audience, right?
Mm,
And for me, this book is about everybody. This book
yeah.
is about leaders within organizations, which is kind of my strong suit, my strength. However, it's also about individuals and employees. And I know, one of the things I often talk about, Bailey, is like in order for sustainable change,
Mhm.
behavioral change, we need, especially in the workplace, we need a top down and a bottom up approach
Mhm.
to that
Yeah,
positive change, right? So we
we
need
share the same
leaders.
view.
Exactly. We need leaders that are bought in. We need leaders that are creating a positive digital culture that see again employees' ability to disconnect or right to disconnect, to use a commonly used phrase, as
Mm,
a benefit rather than a detriment to the
mhm,
business and the business's bottom line. On the other end, from a bottom up perspective, we need employees to practice intentional and uh, uh, pro positive psychological usage of technology rather than in those moments of disconnection going down a rabbit hole where it's detrimental to their either mental health or physical health or relationships. Like we need to have the ability to choose, or employees that are choosing the ability and the right to disconnect in those moments
mhm.
when provided the chance. So it really is for everybody, and I hope there's a little bit of value, and hopefully a lot of value for a lot of people.
Wonderful. All right, Tyler, as we get to the end of this episode, I have another couple segments for you. And this, we're going to have to speed up our thinking a little bit because you have quick thinking, a rapid fire Q&A session. And I'm just going to, and this is tough. Honestly, it's tough for me too. I literally have a podcast called Let's Think This Through, which is anything but quick thinking, anything but quick thinking. But I've created a series of digital wellness based questions that relate to either tactical disconnection or what we've talked about so far. And your job is to spit back the quickest thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
I think so. I think so.
Okay. One, what is your favorite non digital hobby?
Oh, music, 100%. Guitar, piano.
I do see that back there. Best time of day to disconnect.
Oh, mid afternoon and late afternoon, mid and late.
Okay. How long should someone's first digital detox, if they've never done it before, last?
Oh, personal choice. Personal choice. 6 hours, 12 hours. Choose a day. Choose a digital Sabbath that can work too.
Best tip to prevent digital distractions.
Oh, hide your phone. Hide. Turn off notifications. Hide your phone behind your desk. Under, like, throw it across the room. Get it out of there.
So true. Out of sight, out of mind. Okay. Favorite place to disconnect.
Oh, the West Side Highway here in New York.
Oh, nice. One thing everyone should do to improve digital wellness.
Ask: is this helping me reach a state of flourishing, or is technology getting more out of me than I'm getting out of it?
Hmm. Most common mistake people make with digital wellness.
Uh, thinking that thinking that it's binary, um, thinking that 6 hours of tech usage, regardless of if it's being used for connectedness or research or learning, is the same as 6 hours of scrolling TikTok. It's not all the same.
Hmm.
The quantity of the time is irrelevant. It's the quality of the time that we need to consider.
Facts. Most surprising benefit that you've experienced from disconnection.
Hmm. Introspection, right? Self-realization, self-understanding, having time for those thoughts that I might not otherwise have.
Top book recommendation that is not your own for
Hmm.
understanding digital wellness.
Slow Productivity by Cal Newport.
Okay, cool. And last one word to describe your approach to digital wellness.
Hmm. Positive.
Positive and, dare I say, tactical.
Oh, yeah,
Missed
really? Can
opportunity,
I
Tyler.
redo that? Oh my goodness, I
Tac-
missed the. You teed it
Tactical
up
Tyler.
perfectly. You teed it up perfectly. I missed the chance.
No, that's okay. I like it. Positives is absolutely true as well. So I usually end every episode with a what's called train of thought, and the guests will sum up what we've talked about, and you'll have to connect it to what the last episode was about. So
Hmm.
if you could sum up our episode and all the things that we've talked about into one major idea, what would it be?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's moving from a place of fear to fearless positivity or fearless optimism when it comes to our technology. And I think it's being intentional and
Mm,
empowered and feeling empowered to maximize the benefits of technology, again, while rather than mitigating or rather than feeling the negative effects of it. So uh, I would sum it up as such.
okay. So getting away from fear and having technology support our kind of human well-being.
Exactly.
Now, the theme of the last episode, and it's your job to connect these two, she said, we can learn a lot of adult lessons from children.
Oh.
So how do we connect what we've talked about to we can learn a lot of adult lessons from children?
Ooh. Wow. I'm so glad I went to a liberal arts school.
Same.
I was educated just for this question.
You're like, I have been prepping for this my entire school life.
Let me just connect point A and point Z, and let me do it in a very compelling way. That's exactly
That's
what I've
right.
learned. Yeah. Let's think. So, I think what we can you say it one more time though, Bailey, just so I can.
We can learn a lot of adult lessons from children. So how does this connect to what we're saying about not being fearful of tech, but using it to serve our well-being?
I think children offer an incredible example of kind of the optimism and the awe and the specter that they have each and every day, right? Each and every day is, especially as young children, something entirely new that they're experiencing for the very first time. And with that holds limitless potential. And I feel like that's where we're at right now with AI, especially, right? It's new. It holds limitless potential. On one aspect, I think as children, right, there is an element of fear. However, I think more often than not, there's an element of awe and inspiration, right? And I think if we approach our technology with that mindset, awe, inspiration, wonder, benevolence, right? I think kids are naturally benevolent, naturally, kids are kids, no matter like where that child is from, what language they speak, what their background is. Every child has the same, things in common, and sees the other child for what they are, which is exactly that. They don't see anything else, and they see a friend, right? And so I think for us to have that same kind of a approach and that mindset when dealing with technology is something that we can take away from.
I love it. I think that, when you see a kid, no matter what tool you give them, they're going to turn it into a toy.
Yeah.
They're going to turn it into something that serves their joy. And that can even, whether or not there's someone else doing it there with them or not, I think it's a very nice connection you've made there. Tyler, we have made it to the end of the episode. Is there any last piece of advice that you have for folks?
I would say to just keep on playing, keep on exploring, keep on having kind of the best of intentions, and always take that time for introspection, for self-reflection, whether that's from your own personal standpoint or from your partner's standpoint, and or your children, right? Always inquire and ask, how are we using technology to promote our relationships, to promote our human flourishing, and when we view it through that lens, I think only good can come of it.
Thank you very much for coming today. And
Thank you
cheers.
so much for having me. And cheers. Cheers to you, Bailey.
Season 1.
Season 1. Congratulations on the end of a fantastic season.
Thank you. I just want to take a moment here to thank you all. If you have made it to right now, you have made it to the last little bit of the last episode of the first season of Let's Think This Through, a podcast that I started at the beginning of 2024 with the intention of wanting to, take these conversations that I get to have with friends and people that I meet and bring it out to you all in a way that's hopefully a little bit, more chill, easy to understand, and not behind a paywall, as Tyler and I liked to joke. So I hope that you have left some of these conversations feeling inspired, feeling like you learned something, and feeling like you can connect with yourself and others in a little bit of an easier way. Thank you for supporting me as well, and I look forward to being back with you again next season.